So before we start, we just want to go over some major and minor chords that we're going to be using today. The first set of majors will be F, that's F, A and C, and also C major, that's C, E and G, and the other one is a G major, that's a G, B and a D, and then we've got some minor chords we're going to look at as well. So there's a D minor, which is D, F and A, there's an A minor which is A, C and E, and then lastly we've got an E minor, which is a E, G, B. For now, those are the only chords we'll be looking at. Okay, so we've already looked at how to create some basic chords. We've understood a little bit about the difference between major and minor chords. Now we're going to apply that knowledge and create some basic chord sequences using that circle of fifths that we looked at last time. So taking your circle of fifths that you've just either downloaded off the internet or ideally one that you've drawn yourself, what we're going to do, we're just going to pick a chord. The easiest one to start with, I think, here is C. So we'll start with C, C major. Sounds like that. Fantastic. Then we're going to pick a chord which is adjacent to the C. So we can go left, we can go right, we can go down, we could go diagonally. For now, we're just going to go in straight lines. So the next one we're going to do is an A minor, from C to A minor. Okay, fantastic, simple as that. Now we're going to go, let's go to the right, E minor, and we go back up again, let's say to G. We're just sort of following an almost little geometric square, and then it's going to go back to C. We've got a basic 4-chord sequence: C, A minor, E minor, G. Doesn't sound like much at the moment, but we could develop that even though it's quite a simple chord sequence. C. So for example, that could be like a nice sort of Baroque classical piece. C major with a Alberti bass, let's say. That's the sort of thing. Okay, so pause the video here, have a go at making your own chord sequence similar to that, basically just drawing a square. It could be any little square you like. We could go right over here. The easier chords to play tend to be these ones up at the top here, whether you're playing guitar or piano or whatever. These are the easier ones to use. So pause the video here, have a go at creating your own, then we're going to create a few more. The more of these you create, the more you get used to how this works. And eventually you'll get to a point where you don't need to draw things on a circle of fifths. You can just figure it out in your own head. So hopefully you've been able to create a nice simple little chord sequence and play it on your whatever instrument you play. Let's try a couple more. Let's see what other things we can do with it. In the previous one, all we were doing was going up, down, left and right. But in this one, we're going to do something a little bit different. So before we went C, A, E, G. Again, it sounded like this: C, A, E, G. Could be anything that. Let's try something else. Let's see what happens when we move, let's say, diagonally. So again, we're going to start with C, because it's nice and easy. And let's go diagonally down to D minor. C to D minor. Let's work our way across. Let's have an A minor next. And then an E minor after that. And then back to C. So I've drawn basically a little triangle. C to D to A minor to E minor, and then back to C again. Oops, little mistake there. That little mistake could be useful actually, because sometimes you'll make a little mistake and you think, that's not what I intended to play, but it does sound better. For example, where we had a C, D, A, E, back to C. Let's say I put the wrong bass note in. When I get to the D, I'm going to put the wrong bass note in. Kind of works. Anyway, we'll find out in some later lessons that moving the bass note around, you can create some really, really interesting chord sequences. So that particular chord sequence: C, D, A, E. Okay, I quite like that. Let's see if we can develop that in our digital audio workstations. See what sort of thing you could come up with just a basic chord sequence like that. Okay, so expanding on that chord sequence we used, that's C, D minor, A minor, E minor. I'll just show you what I played them on the piano. So C minor was like this, then D minor was here, A minor's down here, and E minor is up here. Not a piano player, and guitar's your thing. That chord sequence is pretty straightforward on guitar as well. We had a C major to a D minor, A minor, E minor, and that should loop round quite nicely. When I was doing another take of this, you could even omit one of the chords. I made a slight mistake, so I went from D minor to A minor, straight back to C again. Then restart on C. Sometimes you'll make what you think is a mistake, but turns out it sounds better. If it sounds right, it is right. So let's see what we could do to develop this. Let's see what we could do with this piece of music. So at the moment we have, let's have a little practice, C, D, A and E. Now when you're recording with DAW, always remember to put the metronome on. The importance of using the metronome will become clear later. Basically, a lot of the marking criteria, it's looking for whether your piece of music is in time, whether it's quantized, whether the rhythm is nice and set straight. And by using a metronome always, just as a default, that will just really help with that. It will increase your mark significantly. So my metronome is going all the way through. I had C major, D minor, A minor, and E. Let's go around twice. I'm just using basic block chords. You don't have to, you can embellish it as much as you like. We'll speak about how much you should embellish a piece later on. Too much can be overwhelming, not enough can be a little bit boring, but there's a bit of a sweet spot as to where that should be. So I've got my lovely little chord sequence there. I can then add some strings to it if I felt like it. It's already starting to come together. It's got legs, hasn't it? Basic chords on strings. Okay, it isn't much, but it's a start, and what a lot of people struggle with when they're trying to write a piece of music, either just for fun or for an academic course, just getting started, getting that initial idea to come together can be really tricky. Whereas this method, it's a sort of instant piece of music. Again, it's not particularly impressive at the moment, but it will be. Okay, let's add some melody. I'm just going to pick out some random notes, maybe 3 or 4 notes is all I'm going to need to create a melody for this. There we go, that was 4 notes I used. It was C, G, A and D. I just picked 4 random notes, made up a little melody. Again, it's not much, but it's a start. You can imagine that sort of having legs and going somewhere. Take the metronome off so we can hear what it'll sound like. Just going to turn it down a little bit. Again, it's not much, but it's a start. Let's look at what else we can do using the same method. Very basic chords, very basic melody. See what other ideas we can come up with. That one sounds sort of ballady, classically, I suppose, but you can choose whichever style you like. Let's see. Okay, well, if you've had a little bit of time just to practice making those short 4 chord sequences on your instrument, we can now look forward to do some more complicated stuff. So by now you should have you might have tried 5, 10, 15, 20 different songs just where we use a few different chords. We use C, A, E to G, or C to E to A to G, or C, G, D, but whatever, little 4 chord sequences. Try them out on your instrument, try recording them into a DAW if you have one available at the moment. that's what you want to do. If you just keep on writing these little miniature songs over and over and over again, the more you do it, the easier it gets, the more you get used to it. So just, write several different ones, little chord sequences. You might have some melody come into your head as you're doing it. You might also make some small mistakes as well whilst you're doing it. And those mistakes, sometimes they sound better than the original plan you made. So write them down, keep them in. Again, it's important to write down your ideas, because you might have a fantastic idea today, think, well, I'll come back to it tomorrow, and by the time you come back to it tomorrow, you've completely forgotten what you were doing. So let's see what else we can do. Let's try another chord sequence. I'm going to write down the chords just on the right-hand side here, rather than drawing all over my thing. Let's start with C again. It's nice and easy. C, then I'm going to move across to F. Then I think I'll move back to C again. Again, we keep it nice and simple. Okay, I'm going to make this an 8 chord sequence now. I'm going to go back to C. I'm going to make the second line similar to the first, but with one difference. I'm going to change this C. Instead of using a C, I'm going to use its relative minor. I'm going to use an A minor here. Whoops, A minor. And then let's go back to G again. There we go. So writing an 8 chord sequence, we've got our chord sequence here, our second playing of it has one slight difference. This is quite a useful little trick to use when you're writing something. Keep it familiar and then have one little bit that's changed, and we'll be expanding on that as we go forward, because we can use this to our advantage. Let's have a listen to what that sounds like when we play it all together. C, then F, then C again, then G. Yeah, pretty simple. Then we go back to our familiar sequence, but here that little change has made all the difference. It's just made the ear sort of prick up a little bit. It's made it a little bit more interesting. Let's see what else we can do to expand on that. So C was good. F. I'm also inverting some of the chords, you'll notice. So the G I'm going to play here. I'm going to keep that G holding in the top there. Then F. Then A minor. Then G. Oh, I made a mistake there. Instead of playing a G like this, I accidentally moved that B up here. But I rather like that. I think that adds a lot of character to the chord. Let's hear it with that mistake added in. It went to F, then it went to A, and then this little, that little suspension really added some character to the chord. That's something that you can put into any chord. You want to put that suspension in every chord. It would be a bit naff, but you could try it. It would sound like this. Sort of works. If you use it over and over again, it's a bit much. I think every now and again it sounds rather nice. You might even start to hear a bit of a melody coming out. To my mind, that sounds like it should be a sort of gospel-y, maybe a 6/8 type feel. So let's put that into our DAW, see what we get out of it. Okay then, so I added a little bit of extra stuff to the chord sequence we had, which was C, F, C, G, etc, etc. I had a little bit of Hammond organ. I thought it sounded a little bit sort of gospel-y. And then the end result is this. Again, this is a very basic little starter piece. It sounds like this. If I take the metronome off for now, you get the idea. Again, that's only a very, very short sequence of chords. There's not really a melody in there at the moment yet, but just using that simple circle of fifths idea, I've managed to create something that could, feasibly be quite usable. Could be something you might want to develop. And again, one of the really important things here is that I've kept everything nicely in time. Again, I can't stress that enough. Keep everything in time. You'll just make your life easier further on down the road. So there we go. There's some basic chord sequences. Whatever instrument you use, whatever DAW you're using, have a little practice. You don't have to record them into a DAW if you don't want to. Whatever you're using, just have a practice at just changing those chord sequences using the circle of fifths. You go up, down, left, right on the circle. practice away on your instrument and see what ideas you come up with. And be sure to write down your ideas or record them in some way.